Okay. Welcome back to Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Generic Hexcrawl number 6279. Here's the Hexcrawl. So last time we decided to help out the village, do something heroic with our time. Because the locals came to us desperate for assistance. They were growing thin because of the crop taxes and things like that they have to give up to these orcs and goblins. Probably mostly the orcs, really. I think the orcs kind of ran the show. So, the orcs probably informed the goblins not to raid the village, to raid other things. Like the trade route was kind of, that was open season. There was no limits on the trade route itself, but the village was protected, the farms around it, and blah, blah, all that's protected. But yeah, the orcs collected everything. They were living large. And so, to resolve the situation, we instigated a conflict between the orcs and the goblins. We brought things to a head. Tensions spilled over. Now, you might say that I handled it and it was too easy, right? It was too simple. There weren't enough complications. There weren't enough wrenches in the engine. And things resolved too easily for a group of 2 level 1 characters. You could be right. And that's going to be the kind of each person's taste, you know? That's really going to be to each person's taste about how many obstacles they want as they play. And if you're the type of player that comes up with a plan, and it's like, okay, I got a plan. Are you the type of player that if you institute that plan, you go through with that plan, do you want a DM that's going to sit there and be like, well, this goes wrong because of this? And it's like, oh, shit. Now I got to improvise, and now we got to go with plan B, or we got to work around, blah, blah, blah. Or are you the type of player that a plan goes off without a hitch because you planned it and everything's good, and it's just like, yep, that's how it went, and congrats, that was awesome. It depends on the player, and it depends on the DM. For me, I found that I did once have a DM that basically just let the plan go through. I recall it specifically because it was in a Shadowrun game, and I came up with an extensive, kidnapping plan. And I thought of a lot of things through, contingencies and all that kind of stuff. And then the plan just kind of went off without a hitch, and there were no issues. And I was really almost dissatisfied at the end, because it was like, It just kind of was like, okay, we just nullified essentially a whole possible, not an adventure, but like a whole thing. Because, okay, the plan just worked. I always expect something to go wrong. Whereas if you have a DM that just creates problems out of thin air, as if God looks down upon you and your plan is like, no, I don't like this, and I'm gonna make this happen to fuck you. That's even worse. That I hate even more. So I like when there's complications, but they have to come from a position of logic. They have to come from a position of, yes, that could have gone wrong, and we're gonna make it go wrong because, well, you didn't cover for it. I actually have not had characters die that often when I play. I tend to survive, because I tend to be cautious. I tend to avoid combat, all that kind of stuff. But one of the most notable character deaths I had, also in a Shadowrun game, was basically that I had fucked with the wrong people, and I started up my car and it exploded because there was a car bomb in it. And I just didn't think about it. I didn't think to check. And as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, fuck. And it's like, yeah, I can't be angry at the DM because it's like, yeah, car bombs exist. I could have planted car bombs everywhere, you know. Why didn't I think that pissing off the wrong people is going to cause some consequences? It was a perfectly valid death, and I was not upset at all about it. So that's the sort of thing. If you're coming from a position of logic, then I can't really be too upset about it. It's my pursuit as a player to try and think of all that stuff. That's what I enjoy as a player. That's what problem solving is in an RPG. And so that's, like I said, what makes solo RPGs a little tricky, because we often come up to these things where it's like, I didn't, if I could think of something that went wrong, I would counter it. And so at the end of the day, the plans often go off without problems, assuming dice rolls are okay. Because I can't think of anything that would go wrong. So you really need somebody else there to like bounce your idea off of to find the holes in it. But so anyways, it's subjective. It's based on the player, based on the situation. But I will tell you that I talked to my mom on the phone, and she loves hearing about all my solo RPG adventures and stuff like that, because she's not very good at RPGs, but she wants to get better, and she wants to learn how to do all this problem solving, you know, and so she is always very interested in hearing what I get up to, because she thinks that I'm like, you know, the gold standard, the best of all time, the GOAT of problem solving in RPGs. And so I told her my couple stories that we did about the giant centipedes and blocking them off and suffocating them, and then the whole thing with the orcs and the goblins, and she was enthralled. I mean, she thought it was brilliant. She loved it. So, you know, had she been playing in this adventure, even if she didn't come up with the plan or anything, but if she had just been involved and witnessed, she would have loved it. And she wouldn't really, you know, she's not going to be and the rest of my family, again, also not the type to come up with all these holes in the plan or problems with the plan that could arise and blah blah blah. They would just be like, wow, that's so smart. I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm just telling you how they feel about it and what they think. So I don't know. I don't have a great breadth of experience of playing with other people and playing with all sorts of different groups and stuff like that. I've been pretty isolated. Obviously, I'm sitting here playing solo. But yeah, I would imagine plenty of people don't mind a plan just kind of working and succeeding, you know, and just success. I don't know. If anyone has any experience playing and has thoughts on the matter, I'd love to know. I guess you kind of compare it to like playing a video game or like a Souls game, you know? There are plenty of people like my brother that if they go in and they're powerful and they fight a boss for the first time and they beat him. They beat him first time. I mean, maybe they don't just utterly destroy him, but they beat him the first try. There are plenty of people that'll be like, well, that's horrible. I don't want to do. That's terrible. That was a weak fight. You know? But then there are people like my brother that would just be ecstatic. It's like, fuck yeah, I beat him first try. Awesome. Yeah. You know, they don't ever want to die to a boss because that's just, oh, well, now I got to try again. This is tough. And then you got people like Lobos that specifically will sit there and not even attack for the first like 20 attempts just so they can learn all the boss's moves because they desperately want to just memorize the fight and for it to be the perfect challenge that it, you know, intended to be. So I guess that's sort of somewhat similar to what we're talking about here. I don't really want a plan to go off completely without a hitch, but I don't want to be frustrated by the DM just screwing me over either. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. Yeah. Anyways, figured I'd get that preamble all out of the way. You know, RPG, I just love to talk about RPGs. And I know, obviously, if you're watching part 3 of this whole thing, you've probably heard me talk quite a bit about RPGs. Yeah, it's just by far my favorite hobby. And I just love so many aspects of how RPGs function and how things all work together and all the nuances. It's great. Anyways, so what we have left, there are no goblins left. Maybe a couple fled, or I'm almost guarantee a good amount fled the scene of the massacre, but they're no longer really relevant to us for the time being. Most orcs did die, but there is a handful left back at the orc camp. I don't remember the exact number we said, probably around 8. Or was it 6? Maybe it was 6 plus the overseer. Seems like a small number. But that's the number of fighting fit orcs left. And then there's going to be some, you know, pregnant women and elderly orcs and maybe some children orcs. There's still a community there, a very fragile, fractured one. So now we have a number of options of how to deal with the orcs. Option A, obviously, least appealing option, is to just leave them alone. There's a decent chance that they no longer feel that they can threaten the village enough to bully us into paying tributes. And so they may just scatter to the wind and go off on their own. But I think that's not entirely likely and probably not an option we want to rely on. Another option is to go in and just kick their asses. Just the two of us. Also a really terrible option. I'm against it for numerous reasons. Another option would be to rally the townsfolk into a somewhat militia. If we convince them that all the goblins are dead and there's only a handful of orcs left, we could probably convince a handful of farmers to pick up some crude weapons and join us in a fight. Not a great option either, because again, it's a direct conflict and we'd likely get many of these farmers killed. Another option would be to pay another tribute to the orcs, assuming that they do want another tribute or demand another tribute, but this time we just poison the food. Which is something that probably has been considered in the past, but they were very fearful of retribution, you know, because there's no guarantee that they're all going to die from the poisoned food or anything like that. That would require quite a bit of poison, and you'd have to guarantee that everyone in the orc camp eats this poison food specifically. It would be way too risky and way too likely to bring down retribution. Because most likely you just get like half the camp sick and then they'd be like, those fucking assholes, let's destroy this camp. They tried to kill us all, you know. So it was probably brought up several times in the past, but shot down very quickly. Now, however, they're desperate. If they are going to demand a tribute, they're going to need the tribute to continue to survive because they have like no experience hunting or you know, anything like that. They have no goblins to rely on, so they're gonna need the tribute if they demand it. They're all gonna eat it, and we don't have to kill them with the poison. We really just have to weaken them, and then we mop up. I'm leaning towards that option is probably the best because it's a binary thing, most likely. They don't have the force, I would imagine, to raid our village. And they might really, I mean, this is miles away, right? These camps are miles away from our village, so they would probably assume that we aren't aware of what has just transpired, you know. So I'm giving orcs a little bit of credit here. that they assume that we're not aware that there's only like, 7 orcs left capable of fighting. So they might just continue as normal. They're going to show up, demand their tribute as normal, and pretend everything is fine. And so they either do that, and we poison the food, and we mop up, or they don't demand a tribute, they scatter to the winds, and we just forget about the orcs, and the problem's solved anyways. It's really one of those two things, because they're not going to attack us or anything. They're not going to change their approach with us in any other way. It would be crazy. Why would they attack us now of all time? Maybe if they thought we were aware of their weakened condition, which we are, but if they thought that, then maybe they'd be like, all right, we got to just torch this place or something. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think most likely they will continue to demand the tribute. So, with that in mind, we went back to the orc camp. We observed this. We observed their low numbers. So we'll go back to the village. We'll inform the locals, that came to us and everything of what has transpired, which I'm sure is going to be good news to them. But we'll say, we haven't wiped out the orcs entirely. There's still a handful left. And so we tell them our plan, that we're going to offer up the tribute as normal. They're going to come for the tribute as normal, but this time we're going to poison the food. And, we'll have to rope the apothecary into this or something like that. But I'm sure practically everyone is on board except for the family. And we have to talk about the family because they are not going to be pleased with us. It's not going to be really a closely guarded secret, I think, for any amount of time that the two of us were not involved in what happened. So the family is going to know. All right. And so now we have to kind of figure out, how do they respond? Because we represent, in many ways, a threat to their leadership and their position. Not that we have any interest. I mean, we want to get the fuck out of this village. We want to get out of here and go to the big city. We want to leave this all behind. So we don't really care. But the family, sees these two locals that are suddenly quite capable. And one of them clearly has, like, magical talent. I don't know if that would be known, however. But obviously, we're quite capable. We seem to be able to handle ourselves. Somehow, we managed to instigate a war between the goblins and the orcs, and they almost wiped themselves out. And now we're planning to finish off the orcs entirely. That's all going to be known information by everybody. And the locals are now kind of rallying around us and regarding us as heroes. We're kind of becoming beloved for what we've done for the village. And so, you've got this family, this patriarch that has ruled the town, the village for many years, that has had a good status quo for them. And now suddenly, in the span of a couple days, you've got these two upstarts that have won over the village and upset the entire status quo. So yeah, we represent a threat to them, regardless of our intentions. Would they try to have us killed? Is really the big question. Is this family that nefarious? After we just saved the patriarch's kid. And so I think one of the things that I would be interested in doing is actually rolling a court tag, or rolling some information more about the court. Because there is a familial clan court. And so this is specifically kind of what we're looking at, a familial clan. Although, I think this clan is pretty small. I don't think there's too many members of the court. So I don't know if I need to roll all of this, but I was curious to just roll one of these court tags. Because that might give us a bit more information about the specific nature of this family. We could just build this ourselves, and we kind of have already, with them not being... They're not great. They're not great. We know that. But let me just roll a sample court tag here to see what we get. 7, awkward birth. Pregnancy is roiling the court and causing severe problems. It may be that a member is pregnant by the wrong man, or a pairing took place that was shocking to society, or a newly born heir is showing signs of inherited blight, or a new heir suddenly excludes a displeased prior incumbent. Court can't hush it forever, and abortion is either impractical, unacceptable, or too dangerous to the mother. Well, I think that starts to get into some icky stuff here that we don't really need to delve into. And I don't know if it contributes much to our ongoing discussion. Let me just roll a second time, just... Potential inspiration. Magical subversion. Some member of the court is under magical influence by another, be it an outside enemy or internal rival. Maybe mind-bending sorcery, a persistent magical curse, or an arcane blessing that will last only so long as they cooperate. I feel like we're dipping too many fingers into too many pies with something like that. Then it's like, okay, why is there so much interest in this little village, you know? I don't think that makes sense. So we're gonna scrap that idea. Okay, let's just make it easy. Black and white is always so simple, right? So the family is pretty evil. Maybe not evil, sort of evil. They're willing to do whatever it takes. The patriarch especially is willing to do whatever it takes to kind of maintain the status quo, which is in heavy danger now of just being entirely shattered. So, you know, he's not sure exactly how he's going to retain this whole tribute aspect. But once he hears word that, okay, we're planning to poison the food and get rid of the orcs once and for all, that's where the patriarch has to step in to put a stop to this, one way or another. Because if he can maintain, you know, if the orcs are still around and they're still demanding tributes and still represent a threat to the village that the locals are somewhat afraid of because they don't have their great heroes here, then he can continue the status quo as it is. And so for that to occur, he needs to take Truco and Balance out of the picture. And I think assassination is the answer here. Always good words for a DM to say. And I'm actually really curious to do this because I have never really attempted it. The question, I mean, obviously other people have had this same issue as DMs, is how do I attempt to assassinate my player characters without it just being like, oh, you don't wake up, you're dead. You know, if you don't hear the assassin creeping into your bedroom, you are dead. That's obviously quite lame. It's also slightly lame to just assume that the players always wake up in the in the event that someone enters their room, and then there's always a scuffle. So I think it's better to subvert the assassination attempt in any way that you can. Generally involving the characters becoming aware of the attempt before it occurs. In this case, one of the members of the family that's not quite fully... Yeah, actually, maybe the kid that they saved. That would be perfect. I mean, in this case, that's fucking hand-delivered to us. The kid that they saved overhears the Patriarch's plan. And so a couple of his older brothers are going to be sent at night to take care of the problem, as he was told. And the boy feels obligated to inform his rescuers that something is going to happen. I think that makes the absolute most sense. And that this is a very good... it's a good argument, I guess, for both Truco and Balance to each other. Truco can argue that, look, because we saved that kid, you know, now he's warning us about the assassination. But Balance argues that they're trying to save this village and people are still trying to assassinate them, you know? It's like, yeah, there's good points on both sides, but okay. We need to figure out a living arrangement for these two. Do they live together? Do they sleep in the same room or anything? They grew up, both of them, in the village. I don't even have an age for both of them at this point, but I would imagine they're 19 or 20. You know, they're young, and they're ready to leave the village. I don't think they live together. I think Truco probably still has his parents. Like I said, he had a better upbringing. We decided that. Balance probably lives alone. And she, you know, in time, she'll just grow old to be this really bitter witch, you know, or something like that. Who knows? So she probably lives alone in her family's old house. Truco lives with his parents still. And so I think they would figure that Balance is by far the easier target. And, you know, again, they don't know that she can cast spells, I guess. So she's just like this defenseless woman. So the assassins will go for her. For sure. And there'll be two of them. They'll go together to guarantee the job gets done. So they'll start with Balance, then go to Truco. But Truco is not going to be at his house. Truco will be in Balance's bedroom, waiting through the night. So he'll be kind of hiding in the corner of her bedroom. And Balance, obviously, not going to be sleeping, but pretending to be sleeping. And there you go. So now we have an assassination attempt, but it doesn't have to be just bullshit. And of course, the would-be assassins come, and we need stats for them. I'm not inclined to make them super strong, because they're just like the local rich kids. So the best that I could offer is the patroller stats, which is sort of your standard, like, difficulty 1 guard. So 12 defense, 10 health. They got clubs, +1, 2d6 damage. They can definitely put on some pain, but they're not well armed. They got leather armor on, and, you know, no shield or anything like that. So they're pretty poor. Okay. So we're in Balance's bedroom. She's in her bed. Truco in the corner. You know, behind where the door is or something. Or behind where the door would open. He's got his dagger. Oh, no, he's got his hatchet and his sword ready. You know, waiting through the night, standing in a corner. Yeah, he's probably got him just, like, leaning against the wall, but they're gonna hear when these guys enter the house. They're not these are not fucking master assassins, so you're gonna hear some creaking wood and stuff. They're trying to be stealthy, but if you're awake, you're gonna hear the creaking of wood. So then he grabs his sword and hatchet, and he's waiting, sweat starting to bead down his head. And they enter the room. Two dudes, and I mean they're probably all known to each other. It's not that big of a village, so they probably know who these two goons are of the Petraskin family. You know, his two elderly sons. He'll be weeping tomorrow, that's for damn sure. Now, what I could do with balance is put up the force barrier, like directly in front of her bed, kind of bisecting the room. And that way they cannot get to her, you know, and that leaves Truco open to just like stab the shit out of him and kill him. But it also prevents her from assisting. So, probably not the best bet. I think better option would be to just logic prison one of them. So this is going to be a surprise round for the two of us. Because they're expecting balance just sleeping there, and that's as far as they tell. We don't really need a sneak roll or anything like that because we're not moving. So, you know, I don't know what roll you would do for pretending to be asleep, but I think it's just fine to hand wave that. And then Truco is hidden, which is just a status. So he is just in the state of being hidden. Once hidden, creature or object remains hidden until found or something happens to end the state. Hidden creature stops being hidden after it attacks, shouts, casts a spell, or does anything else to draw attention to itself. So yeah, he is just hidden. Unless they specifically start searching the room, but they would have no reason really to do that. Now, you could say again that it was very convenient that they went for balance first instead of Truco. But this is something that I would concede if I was DMing for a group. If they post up in Balance's room, I'll just have the thing occur in Balance's room. If they post it up in Truco's room, I would just have the thing occur in Truco's room. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's logical that the assassins could go to one of the other rooms first. So it's not like a gotcha, like, oh, you got fucked because I decided it. Like, there is some logic that would allow for it. But again, I'm trying to be a more generous DM, a bit nicer of a DM. And so I would let them have that for the most part. Okay, so it's a surprise round. We just get a couple actions free to ourselves. So Balance is going to immediately snap her eyes open and cast Logic Prison on one of the two guys. So he just immediately becomes held. Done. He's just wrapped up in magical runes in the middle of the room. And then Truco will pop out an ambush with his sword and hatchet. And I need to actually put some numbers here. He's got +3 because he's got a 13 strength. He gets 2d6, one hand, This has just the slashing property, and then the hatchet +3, I think is 1d6, I believe. Now my entire Firefox just froze up. That bodes well. It is 1d6, brutal, light, and thrown 5. And it's offhand. Brutal, light, thrown 5. Alright. So, yeah, so he pops out. This is a surprise, an ambush attack from Hidden. So we're giving him the boon. Which means he's rolling this attack with 2 boons with trickery. And if he hits, he'll deal 4d6 damage. That's pretty good. And if he crits, 5d6. He rolled a 15. Odds are good he will crit. Yep. He got 23, so he crit. And this is 5d6 damage against 10 health. Boom. Massacred. Fucking slashed him through the stomach and bit into his neck with the hatchet. Dude's very much dead. That's our round. So then the other guy, obviously, is going to try to overcome with his intellect roll. He has a 10 intellect. He rolled a 6, so he is not. So Truco will now turn onto him. It does impose 1 Bane on attacks, so this is just a flat roll for Truco. Because trickery would be 1 boon, so they cancel each other out. It's just a +3, and all he needs is a 9 or higher. He got it, so that is 4d6. 18. Dead. As we continue to do combats where we don't take any damage. Pretty nice. Okay. So now we have 2 dead men in the middle of Balance's room on the floor that belong both to the Batrascan family. Now, we were warned by one of the members of the family, probably very much in private. This wasn't shouted from the rooftops or anything. So the locals are not aware of the assassination attempt. We have to play this somewhat carefully, because it would be very easy now for the Patriarch to turn this against us. That these 2 ne'er-do-wells, these misfits, have now slaughtered 2 of his own in cold blood. But there's a lot of factors on our side. 1, we already saved 1 of his kids. 2, we're helping the village immensely against the oppressive threat of the orcs. And 3, the bodies are in our home, which is a strong legal case, I would say. So I don't think we touched the bodies. I don't think we moved the bodies. I don't know if there is any form of authority in the village. You know, I don't think there's any guards or police or anything like that. But I also don't think that we can just go back to bed and forget about it. I think we have to inform somebody about this. So we don't want to go to the Patriarch, even though that's normally who you would go to, almost certainly, is the leader of the village. Because obviously we know that he's trying to have us killed. So we really need to cement the court of public opinion here. And I think we either rouse the town to inform them that this happened, or probably just as easily we go to, like, the pub. The local pub. and tell the barkeep there. And from there, I mean, word's gonna spread, and hopefully he's an amiable fellow, and he'll have some good advice for us. So yeah, we tell the local barkeep that two members of the Petraskin family, just snuck into Balance's room and tried to have her killed, and now they lay there dead. It's the middle of the night. Nothing's going to happen yet. So I think after that, someone's been informed and word's going to spread, we probably go back to Truco's house, spend the night there. So we get our logic prison back. And then morning comes. Obviously a lot of hullabaloo. I think the Patriarch's going to have a tough time spinning this. You know, because it's like, what could he possibly say? You know, there's gonna be a meeting here in the town square. I'm sure things are gonna come to a head. We don't have any evidence or really any indication that the family has been skimming off the top of the tribute, you know, so we don't really have much of anything to say about that matter. All we were told is that we were going to be killed by the Petraskin family, by the Patriarch. We wouldn't really have any great idea as to why, because we just saved his kid. All we were told is that the assassination attempt was going to occur, and it did occur. So I think that's all we could really say. The problem is that we risk outing the boy who told us. So we'd have to just be vague about it, that we were tipped off that this was going to occur, and lo and behold, it did. There's evidence of it. Their bodies are lying in my bedroom, you know. Obviously, the Patriarch would argue that that's preposterous. We would have no reason. He would have no reason to want them dead. They just saved his boy, and he would have to kind of go with the flow here, and be on the locals' side, that they're helping us with the orcs, even though he doesn't want our help with the orcs. So he's trying to just deflect blame, because he still wants the locals on his side and go from there. But he is running out of options here. At the end of the day, he'd rather live and be the ruler of this village, or, at least some position of authority, rather than having the locals all turn on him and there's like a public hanging or something like that. So what does it come down to then? How do we adjudicate this? We could do a social challenge, as these modern games are often fond of. I don't ever do stuff like that, but it is an option. But really, it just comes down to like a roll. And really, what do we want? What do Truco and Balance want? Do we want to convince the locals that the Patriarch tried to have us killed? Does that benefit us in any way? It's hard to say, because we don't know why he tried to have us killed. So until we know why, there's not much we can really say. The Patriarch's going to spin it more towards that this was obviously just some sort of personal dispute between these four individuals. you know, his two sons and our two characters. There was some sort of personal dispute that we're not talking about. And it's just obviously highly regrettable and tragic that it led to such bloodshed. But the locals, again, are all kind of on our side. We have, if we're going to use the official rules here, their disposition towards us is friendly, whereas their disposition towards the family is indifferent. So it's going to be very tough for him to like make any sort of case here, again, because the bodies were found in our house and we did just save his kid, his other kid. So yeah, he doesn't have much fight here, and we honestly can't pin anything much on him. We have no evidence really, unless the young kid wants to speak up and say, yes, he definitely was planning their assassination. I'm the one who told them. And he's not going to do that because he's fearful. So at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, well, this is shitty, but I guess we move on with our lives. Yeah, that's how I'd say it. Now, again, this is just how I would work through it. But players, you know, if this were an actual game, players could go in all sorts of different directions, you know? They might really try to hammer home and pin this assassination on the guy. That's a whole, you know, thing. But I'm not going to attempt to do that. You know, at the end of the day, the family is not like insanely malicious. They're not like abducting villagers and sacrificing them to the dark gods, or, you know, they're not doing anything like that. They've just mostly been skimming off the top. They have kept the village safe. It has been safe for decades. And yeah, they're greedy, and eventually this would lead to the downfall. But they're not the worst. So the village, it doesn't despise the family or anything like that. So the crowd kind of disassembles slowly, but there is still the matter of the tribute that's coming up. I don't know when that's going to be exactly. And there's also the matter of the curse. And since they have everyone gathered here in the town square, it's probably a good opportunity for several of the farmers to speak up about this, that clearly there's something untoward and magical going on with their crops. Their crops are massive, but they're making their families sick, quite sick. And at this rate, if they only continue to churn out large crops that make people sick, it'll be the death of them. You know, even without orcs present, it'll be the death of them. They won't have any food. So at this point, like, yeah, 3 or maybe 4 farmsteads, like a good chunk of the farming community here has experienced these large crops and has eaten these large crops unknowing, and many family members, many of them have gotten drastically sick, and I would even say that one of them has died, like a farmer's wife or some innocent person has died, and the farmer, the most vocal one, is obviously quite convinced that it was these large crops. And of course, some of their livestock that is eating these crops also getting sick and maybe dying. The initial farmstead that experienced this, they have been, their appetites have really seemed to get out of control. They never seem to stop eating. And he is also firmly convinced that there is some sort of, the word curse does come up in conversation here. which sends a lot of murmurs through the crowd that they are cursed. And they look again to Truco and Balance, who seem to be capable of doing anything. And like, please, look into this. We're all going to die. And Balance just kind of rolls her eyes and is just ready to get the fuck out of here. But Truco can't leave the village in this state where they would likely all die. You can't leave it like this. So, looking into a curse. Balance has magical abilities. No one knows that, except for Truco. So, Truco says publicly that they will investigate it. They will try to remove this dreadful curse, so that this village may stay strong and survive. And then in private, he looks to Balance and is like, "What the fuck are we gonna do about a curse?" Let's see. If I was playing, and I am playing, what's my approach to investigating the cause of a curse in the farmland here? I suppose we need to, as a DM, think about why the curse may have occurred. Well, there's two ways here. We have purposeful or incidental. Is this a purposeful curse that was placed on this farmland and this community? Or was it an incidental thing that has occurred because of negligence or happenstance or some other randomness? I lean towards incidental because I can't think of many great reasons why someone would purposefully curse this community. We could come up with all sorts of backstory, that there's some jaded witch or something that was outcast years ago and has planted this insidious seed of curses. But this is a very recent thing, so I don't think that has much bearing. So I lean more towards incidental. Because again, purposeful, it's like someone would purposefully do this that is both capable of casting a curse on a bunch of farmland and has a reason to do so. And it's like, that doesn't leave many suspects that aren't like personally connected to the village, such as a former resident or something like that. I mean, a witch would be good, but this is just too recent. This is all too quick, for that to make any sense. Unless I'm suddenly like, oh yeah, there was that old Blair witch that lived here a few weeks ago. We ran her out of town. Like, no, just not good. So, incidental. Why would there be an incidental curse on this farmland? Well, keep in mind, this is a trade route. There is a lot of merchandise that travels between big cities. We know that the one city on our Hexcrawl map has great treasure in parentheses. So it is a big city that has apparently a lot of magical treasure inside of it in various forms. So yeah, I could certainly see why magical relics could travel between or along this trade route. And perhaps something fell off a wagon. Now, obviously, finding something stuck in the mud, like this cursed relic, and just removing it is not much of an adventure and is not very exciting. So we'd have to say that, okay, finding the thing and removing it is step one. But that does not remove the curse. The curse is now seeped in to the ground and the air and the entire environment. Now, step 2 is actually removing the curse, lifting the curse. And that, yeah, obviously leads to all sorts of adventures. Pretty much anything under the sun could result in, oh yeah, now you've listed the curse. Like, literally, you could take any pre-written adventure or anything, any sort of adventure, and just say, oh yeah, a wizard needs an item that's at the end of this adventure. Go get it. You know, you can do anything at that point. Okay. I mean, so let's look around at our environments. We have a barbarian camp to the southwest. We have ruined caves to the south. That's promising. But even more promising, ruined barrow mounds to the south. Balance is, she is capable of the dark arts. For whatever reason, she's gravitated towards those types of abilities. Who's to say how, like, a hedge mage develops certain traditions of spells, but you know, for whatever reason, she's shown an affinity and a talent for dark arts. But she's not learned, nor is she really experienced. So I could lean towards Balance herself being possibly capable of lifting the curse. I just don't know how she would get knowledge of what she would need to lift the curse. And that's usually where the outsider wizard comes into play. It's like, oh yes, of course, I have read many tomes about this type of curse. I will need blah 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 from this type of location to lift it. You know, it's very easy. Our problem is, of course, that we don't have anyone in the village. But we do have a charismatic priest. And now that I remember the charismatic priest, and I said that he was a recent arrival, which was not specified in the text, but I just thought it was more interesting if he was a somewhat recent arrival, that leans me back towards the purposeful option. This priest is the one responsible for cursing the farmland. And maybe he is now using that to steer the locals towards a new religion. Perhaps not so overtly, you know, much like Christianity. Perhaps he's using their current beliefs and slowly conforming them to some new beliefs. And I think it's time that we figure out exactly what's going on with this priest. Because number 13 on the map to the southeast is a landmark belonging to a religious cult. This we need to figure out. And I like the idea of this curse that's driving people to insatiable hunger. And of course, my mind always crawls towards eldritch horrors. So I'm picturing a cult that worships the Great Devourer, you know, the paragon of endless hunger. And so this is like their name brand curse that afflicts people, driving them to just consume. I like this direction. I think this is good. It's the sort of thing that I'd be iffy about running for my family, because I don't know how much they care about eldritch horrors and all that sort of stuff. But for my personal taste, obviously. So, the landmark to the southeast, it just says landmark, and then it says religious cult in parentheses. I don't know if it's really known by the locals at all that it belongs to a religious cult or that a cult is operating out of there. And I think probably it's an existing landmark that has been repurposed, and this cult is kind of sweeping through the countryside. And so they've set up a small shop there. They've set up a small community there, and they sent in their most charismatic member into the village of Hoopstead to become a new preacher and to slowly sway the villagers with the aid of their name brand curse, the insatiable hunger. And the curse can probably take numerous forms in the way that it functions, because a curse that you're trying to input into a city is going to work differently than a curse in a rural village. So obviously here it affects our crops, but in a city it could, they could curse all sorts of stuff. Who knows what? They could curse the water supply or blah, blah, blah. So the curse does kill some people. It separates the weak from the strong, obviously, always. And then those that survive become insatiably hungry. We need to make it a bit more magical than that, though. A bit more unique. So they become insatiably hungry, but I think that we need to change it a little bit, that they can start just like eating anything and like kind of surviving. And that probably starts out really minor. Like they eat stuff that's like technically edible, but is not normally consumed. Like, I don't like bark, or leather, or I don't know, shit. It's technically edible. It's not going to just instantly kill you if you eat it or anything. But then as time goes on and they develop more, then they start being able to just eat anything. They're eating like I don't know, really. I mean anything. Metal, tools and like plates. Like they're just eating anything. And they're not suffering really any ill effects from it, but they're just constantly hungry. And of course, they will consume creatures, they'll consume people eventually. They'll consume everything. Eventually, they'll just be a scourge that consumes the entire planet. And that's really the goal of the cult, which will usher forth the Great Devourer, who will allow them to be reborn in a new paradise where they are all filled forever. Cults are crazy, you can always go crazy with cults. It's fun. All right, so that's our cult, and I think we've come up with a good plot here, which makes it makes it a little tricky. And depending on your players, they will either point towards the priest and have already latched onto the priest, or they might require a slight nudge, possibly from like the barkeep, who just mentions something relatively minor about the priest. Maybe he just mentions offhand that like it seems like these troubles started after that new priest arrived. And it's like, oh god, that priest, he's responsible for everything. So either way, our eyesight, our gaze is pointed towards the priest now. The thing with the orcs, we're waiting for that tribute to happen. Again, orcs are not aware of days of the week or anything, or any strict schedule, but they're going to be coming, relatively soon, because they were attacked remember, they were going to get a tribute from the goblins, and we interrupted that. And now that's all burned and gone. So they were already running low. The tribute's going to come soon. Maybe the next day or something. Or within the next day. And once that happens, you know, we'll follow the orcs back and mop that up. But for now, we want to look into this priest. And again, I'm just thinking of like midnight mass and stuff like that. So I think there probably is some sort of small chapel here or something like that. If we're going by the setting of Weird Wizard, obviously there are deities. The major deity is the High One. There's a lot, though. This actually has a lot of deities. But for a rural community like this, I lean towards something obviously very natural. So, Grandfather Tree, the god of life and living things, most is often associated with the animism tradition. I think that's a fair choice. So they have a little chapel here to Grandfather Tree, and that's who most of the locals sort of revere as being their provider and helping with their crops. And so the priest arrived. They haven't really had a priest ever. Or not in recent memory have they had a priest, because they're a small village and it's a very kind of rural religion. So most keep to themselves, but they have this little chapel that many like to go into to pray when they want a good harvest and blah, blah, blah. But now this priest showed up and declared that he was a priest of Grandfather Tree. And so he took up residence in the chapel and has been giving sermons. And he's very charismatic, so a lot of people have taken to him. Because he's saying all the right things that they like to hear, and he's a big fan of Grandfather Tree. So he lives in the chapel in a very modest setting. But now that discussion about obviously with the crops and the curse or whatever, his sermons have been changing slightly. He has been addressing that. Perhaps that he is arguing that this is not a curse. This is actually a blessing from Grandfather Tree. You know, we are doing well, and he has sent us this massive bounty of blessed crops. And it is only those that lack faith that are growing ill from consuming them. Those strong in their faith will grow strong from his bounty. So on and so forth. And over time, as he grows a stronger following among the locals, you know, he'll continue to kind of twist his message more and more and lean towards discussing the nature of hunger and, you know, that kind of. He'll start to slowly introduce these cult concepts. And as obvious, if this continues to progress and locals start willingly eating these crops because they believe that it'll make them strong because their faith is strong, and those that do develop this massive hunger, he's obviously going to spin that as a very good thing. So on and so forth. You get the idea. I don't have to elaborate that much. So we want to investigate this guy. There's a couple approaches. One would be to sit him down and talk to him. and figure out, what his story is and where he came from and blah, blah, blah. If he knows anything about he's been talking about these crops and he claims that they're from our deity and blah, blah, blah. Sort of a weird coincidence that they just started propping up as soon as he showed up. But that approach doesn't usually lead much, especially when you have a really charismatic guy. He'll talk his way around you. We could take a more violent approach and beat the answers out of him, but that might be step 2. I don't know if that's step 1. So the best approach probably is just to observe him, stake him out, just watch him, listen to all his sermons, see how he goes about his day, see what he's up to. See if he's connected in any way to the farmland and the curse. And, of course, he is a cultist. Cultists always like to meet up with one another. It's just part of their code. So eventually he is going to meet up with a handful of other cultists on the outskirts of town, towards the southeast of town, to give a report on the ongoing nature of the curse. Because this is kind of a big deal for them. This is a big gain if they can convert, 80% of this village over to the cult. Or even 50% of the village over to the cult. I mean, that's a pretty big get. This is not a super civilized area. There's not a lot of just, regular old villages around. And this is a major trade route into the big city. Or is on the major trade route. So this is kind of a big thing. There's a lot of pressure on this guy to be charismatic enough and win over the town and curse them properly. So yeah, they're definitely eager to hear his reports. And I would say for a timeline, I mean, you're looking at only maybe a month or 2 before most of the village is going to be ravenously hungry. And we've already wasted a good amount of time investigating this whole orc and goblin thing. Like I said, a couple weeks of recon does have consequences. So we observe. We try to go about business as much as normal as possible, and we observe. And again, this is probably where I would just drop it down to an agility roll, unless I'm going to come up with some really clever... you could take it a little step further and observe in plain sight and actually attend all his sermons and stuff like that and become or pretend to be really interested in what he's saying. And, really be eager listeners. Has its own risks. Obviously, anytime you're going to infiltrate a cult and pretend to be one of them or anything like that, has its own risks. But it nullifies any risk of, being caught kind of skulking around or trying to, tipping them off or something, that something's up. It's a couple different approaches. I'm not sure which one to go with. I think we'll stay distant. I don't think either of us two are really great pretenders or great conversationalists or anything like that. So we'll keep observe from a distance. So this is going to be just straight up agility roll for a week, and that week is going to definitely be interrupted pretty quickly by the orc dilemma. But let me just roll this. So Truco got a 10, so he passed. Balance got a 16, so they both pass. So they'll get some good info about this, and will probably lead to that meeting with the orcs. Not the orcs, the meeting with the other cultists. But before that happens, we have to deal with this tribute. So the orcs arrive, and they arrive, pretty much with the same force that they usually arrive with. Except now this is the majority of the orcs left. But we don't know that. The locals don't know that. Well, the locals now do know that. And they offer up the tribute. And of course they offer up like the giant vegetables. Not entirely, but half the tribute is going to be some of the giant vegetables. Because not everyone is fully convinced by the priest yet that these are blessed. And still plenty of people are quite wary, especially the guy that lost his wife. You know, he's not really buying the priest's bullshit. So half the tribute is probably the giant stuff, half is normal stuff. And it's all been poisoned thanks to the apothecary putting poison on it. Which is a rare thing. Found in nature. It even says it's found in nature, but it's listed as rare. I guess it's rare, somewhat dependent. But yeah, our apothecary can make some sort of, you know, some berries or some poisonous berries. Yeah, there's plenty of options. And so the orcs take the tribute and pretend like everything is as normal. Nothing is unusual here, and they'll be back, you know, soon enough for more, so there better be more, and blah, blah, blah. They put on a bold face. And they head off. And Balance and Truco kind of, you know, nod to all the locals, and then they follow the orcs back to their camp. Ho ho ho. Ho ho ho. Right. And then a few hours later, after the orcs get to their camp and dive into this food that they've been given, and they start eating it, and they start getting noticeably ill, even from, you know, an outside observer, that's when we strike. There isn't much fancy that I really have planned here, you know? We're just kind of gonna rain death on them. They're going to be somewhat scattered. They're not all going to be in like some central tent or something. So force barrier doesn't have a lot of application for like burning down their home or something. This is mostly just going to be us trusting that the poison does its job. And this might be a battle where we actually finally take damage, but we'll see. Honestly, how I would do this, maybe, if I was DMing this at a table, is I'd lay out the battle mat and have, you know, one of those big battle mats that's like, I don't know, however many squares by, like 40 squares or something, by 60 squares, something like that. And then I'd probably just, like, roll dice or something across the battle mat for each orc. And wherever it lands, that's where the orc starts the battle. Or that's where it's standing currently. And then put buildings kind of around them in various locations. But then they're somewhat in disparate locations. And I don't have to think about it too much. For us, though, Theater of the Mind, yeah, they're just not going to be bunched up. They're going to be around. No one's on guard duty or anything like that. Because, you know, they can't really afford too many to be on guard duty. They're just hoping nothing attacks while they're weak here. And you know, pretty much all of them are sick. All of them have been poisoned. So, you know, once we get to like within 20 yards of the furthest one out, you know, the one closest to the outskirts, then there's probably another within 4 or 5 yards, and then another couple within like 5 yards, and so on and so forth. And they're scattered around their camp a bit. And we'll just kick it off, I guess. Yeah, we'll just kick it off. So we've got 6 orcs. And then the orc overseer. Okay. That's what we got. And, let me bring up the orc stats again. We'll just see how it goes. As soon as we start attacking one, the whole thing is it's all gonna be one big fight from there. But I would say the furthest one away from us is probably 40 yards. So it's 20 yards from the closest one. So all the orcs are within a 20-yard span. That's how I'm ruling it. Live with it. As for the poison, so the poison's trait is technically luck ends, and as long as it's active, you roll everything with 1 bane, and everything else gets 1 boon against you. Also, at the end of each round, you take 1d6 damage, or you lose 1d6 health, one of the two. For our purposes, we're gonna morph it a little bit. We're gonna keep the bane and boon system, and that's probably it. That's probably it. I don't think I'm even going to take down damage or anything. We're just going to do the boon and bane. Okay. So, first thing, I guess, is our stealth roll. We are going to get boons on this because we're rolling against we're rolling against them, technically. Their observation. So I definitely give a boon because they're not in good condition to observe ambushers coming in the distance. So Truco gets +3 with 2 boons. He needs a 6. Oh, Jesus. He rolled a 1 and then 1 and then 1. So Truco finally failed. And there's no way around that. There's no rerolls happening. Balance's roll at this point is kind of a moot point, but she did succeed. But yeah, Truco alerted the orcs. I don't know how. We were only trying to get within 20 yards, 60 feet. I don't even know if I need to call for a roll at that far. And we're like, what's the difference? I get we missed the surprise round. If they spot us at like 80 feet. I gotta respect the rolls, though. I did it, so we gotta respect it. So we're like 80 feet out. And Truco kind of bumbles a little bit through a bush. And the one orc on the outskirt does happen to see us in a bit of a haze. And he shouts in Orcish some bloodthirsty command, waking up and notifying the rest of the whole camp. And then we lose surprise. And combat starts. So 80 feet, we're like 20... 20... What is that? Why did I pick 80 feet? Well, if I say it's 25 yards, then we can just move up 5 and fire. So that's kind of cheap. I guess we'll bump it up to 30. We're 30 yards out from the closest orc. So we're not going to take the initiative. We're going to wait and see. The orcs are wary. They are not in good condition. And they're not that stupid. Remember, these are all the survivors of the big goblin battle. So they're not stupid. Or they're cowardly. One of the two. Or both. So the one in front there, he's not going to just charge in on his own because he sees intruders. He's going to wait. He's going to wait till they've got the numbers. So I think now, like, at the end of that turn, like 4 of them have kind of bunched up and are looking at one another. They got their weapons in hand. They're like clutching their stomachs a bit, but they got rage in their eyes for sure. And the other 4 or the other 3 are definitely on their way still. All right. For us, then, we're going to move up 5 yards, and that's it. We don't really have much else that we can do. Nothing is going to be within range 25. So we just sit. Then we take the initiative, so we need to go again right away, and we'll move up another 5 yards, so now we're within 20, and now we fire. So Balance will just fire. Remember, she gets a boon because we get a boon on everything we do against them, which is pretty good. That's why we did this. She succeeds. Yeah, no matter what. So she gets 2d6 damage. Nothing amazing there. 6 damage against 1. Truco fires. He rolled a 1 again. He does get 2d6 boons. So that's a 9, which is still a failure. Truco is not having a good go of this, and Balance is concerned. Wondering if he's poisoned. But that's it. That's the turn. So they all get to go. So the group of 4 is now going to run towards us. So they get within 5 yards. And then the other 3, including the Overseer, also run. And they were maybe 10 yards back. So they're 15 yards away from us. Now it gets trickier. I could take the initiative, use another force barrier. We do that same trick. I hate to repeat the same gag, but it does work. Again, assuming we give them each 1d6 damage, and it would give us time to move back. It's pretty fucking potent. Yeah, it's really hard to argue. All right. So we're both going to take the initiative. Truco will fire again before she sets it up. This time he hits for 3d6. 14 damage. So he puts one of the orcs down. Excellent. Then she erects a force barrier. Like a couple yards in front of them. You know, time for them to get up to a bit of speed there. A few yards in front of them. And we're both going to move back 5 yards. They all go. The 4 that are up front, or the 3 now that are up front, will all run face first into it. But the other 3 are going to run up to it. They're not going to slam into it because they're not that stupid. But so that first one is going to take 3 damage. He's alive. Ooh. He's alive. He's just at 1 health. The second one takes 1 damage. And the third one takes 3 damage. 7. And then the barrier has taken 7 damage, so it's at 33. None of them can attack it. They all did their run actions to run. Because we were 10 yards away from them. So they would have had to have run. So yeah, they're all together now, all 6 of them. And we're basically repeating the same gag. Okay, so we're 10 yards away from them, give or take. Maybe it's more like 7, but, you know. Neither of us are going to take the initiative because we wouldn't be able to do anything. And they're all going to try and break through this wall, just like before. I mean, I could have them go around, but honestly, like, if you were playing and the DM suddenly said that, oh, you collide with like a solid wall of force in front of you, would your first thought be to try to break through the wall or try to maybe go around and find where it ends? And then assume that orcs are dumber than anything that you would say. And I would still think that they're just going to try to break through for at least a little bit. So, yeah, they're all just trying to smash into it with their weapons. Orc 1 does 6 damage. Orc 3 does 11 damage. See, it's not going to last long. Oh, it should have healed 1d6. 1. Is it already at 17, or did I fuck up the math? No, 11. Yeah, okay. Orc 4. 4 damage. It's at 13. Orc 5. 10 damage. It's at 3. Orc 6. 6 damage. It breaks through. It's gun. And then the Overseer just can move. And I said that we're probably at 7 yards. So he can move up 5. And then he actually has a whip. He's an Overseer, so he has a battle axe in one hand and a whip in the other. And the whip is long, so he can do a reach attack and actually hit or attack Truco. I don't know, I just picked Truco. So he's going to try and whip Truco from range. It's a +1 with 1 boon. He gets a Bane for being poisoned. And then I didn't use my reaction, so I guess I'll dodge. Which means he's rolling with two Banes. He rolled a 17, 18. -5 is 13. That is a hit. Unfortunately, he does no damage. 0 damage. If he crits, it's 1d6. But really, he wants to use it to target an ally, because the ally will make rolls to attack with 1 boon and deal an extra 1d6 damage for 1 minute. Had I known it would have done 0 damage, it's kind of like pointless here. He's meant to whip his buddies, as you do. Is that how it is in the equipment list? That it just does nothing? Yeah, 0, but you can use it to disarm, grab, drag, and trip. So maybe that's what he should have done, but I didn't player that, and those are different roles. So disarming, I think he would have had a Bane. I don't know if the whip specifically also incorporates that Bane. It doesn't say that it doesn't get the Bane, so... yeah. He would have rolled with another Bane, but I don't think that would have mattered. No matter what, he succeeded. But then, on a success, target takes no damage, and instead they make an agility roll, dropping one object in its hands on a failure. So I guess he'll roll his agility. Okay, he succeeded, so it's a moot point. He could have also grabbed, tripped, or something else. I've already forgotten. Drag, okay. I guess he could have tried to grab him. But we went with disarm to get the bow out of his hands, and he failed. So that's it. All right, now it's our turn. And very conveniently, this fucking overseer has separated himself from his buddies. I'm putting up another force barrier. And she's going to move 5 feet back. Truco is 2 yards away from this overseer, right? And we have said... somewhere in the minor activities section, to draw or stow a weapon is 2 yards of movement each. So that means to stow his bow is 2, to draw his sword is 2, and to draw his hatchet is 2. But I think you can drop something for free. So he could drop his bow and draw 2 weapons, move a yard up, and then attack if he wanted to. It's probably better, right? He probably prefers melee. We get the brutal trait. We deal 4d6 damage. We have slashing. Yeah, he's gonna prefer melee, so he'll do that. He'll just drop the bow in the mud, pull out his sword and hatchet, move up a yard, and swing. And so he rolls with 2 boons plus 3. Perfect. All right, it's not a crit, it's a hit, and he's rolling 4d6 damage. It's pretty good. Level 1 rogue, and he gets to reroll 1s. All right, so 2, 3, 2, 2, so 9 damage. And the overseer has 40 health, so 31 now. He's gonna be a little tricky. And overall, the fight's gonna be a little tricky. But, yeah. Okay, new round. We both take the initiative. Ideally, we destroy this overseer in one go. The new round, he's going to repeat the same attack, sword and hatchet, with trickery, 2 boons. He rolled a 7, no crit. 12. This guy is a defense of 15. 12, okay, that's barely a hit then. We got a 15. Thank goodness. 4d6 damage. That's it, 12. Puts him at 19. And Balance is going to use the all-consuming fires of hell. Of course. Could also cast One True Love, which would make him not able to do anything this turn. That might be better. The odds of me killing him in one turn with 19 health, 3d6 damage, That's going to average out to 10 or 11 damage. 10.5 technically, I think. So he's definitely not dying from that. And he will catch fire, but that's going to be another 3.5 damage. So on average, he'll end up this turn with like 4 or 5 health left. And the problem is he's going to swing fucking hard. He's going to be swinging +3. He won't have the boon, so it'll just be a straight +3, but he's on average hitting Truco with that attack, and he's dealing 4d6 damage. Which obviously isn't pleasant. So yeah, we're gonna go with One True Love. I didn't think it would ever happen in combat, but yes, this is a good time to use it. Wait a minute, did I already go? No. No, she cast Force Barrier last turn. Now we both just took the initiative. So she's gonna cast One True Love. She's gonna use Certain Outcome to guarantee it, so I don't want any funny business here. So it's a success. I could lose 2 health to regain the casting One True Love, but yeah, it's good enough. And I guess, I mean, he regards balance as his one true love. And it just says your target is your ally until you harm it, its friends or loved ones, or its property. It's our ally. I don't think it's just one person's ally. That would be a really lame spell. So it's our ally. My friend is your friend, so on and so forth. So, yeah, he's just our buddy. Until we harm it, its friends or loved ones, or its property. Or it witnesses us perform an act it would find objectionable. But we're not doing anything because the round's over. For us. He gets to go. He's not going to do anything either. He's just kind of looking at balance with puppy dog eyes and like, oh my god. She's right there. My one true love. Oh my god. Meanwhile, all of his orc buddies are going to hammer on this new wall that they now encounter. And they thought they had broken the wall, and the Overseer went through, but now they find another wall. So another round of 2d6s. 6 damage. So that's 34. 6 damage, 28. 4 damage, 24. 2 more. 11 damage, that's a big one. 7 damage. Since that's 6, it heals for 1d6. It's at 8. It's gonna shatter, but it bought us another round. And I could cast it again if I fucking felt like it. Eventually they might try and go around. But I think this turn we really want to kill the Overseer. New round. We both take the initiative. Truco's gonna attack him again. Yeah, I could, if a player argued for an extra boon here, I might give it to him. This guy's definitely not expecting an attack. He's with his one true love. But I don't think I really need it. So, +3 with 1 boon, or 2 boons actually. That's a hit. Actually, if I get a 5 or a 6, no, okay, it's just a hit. 4d6 damage, rerolling 1s. That is a 1. So that's 12 damage. He's at 7. And he no longer views balance as his one true love. And he wants to kill both of us. Brutally. So now we're going to use all-consuming fires of hell. This is going to be an intellect roll versus his agility, which is 11. We do get a boon. So this is +4 with 1 boon versus 11. We're gonna need it. Yeah, we're gonna need it. Perfect. That's a 12. 3d6 damage. 12. Dead. Good and good. Even if you failed, I could have just lost 2 health to make it succeed anyways. This is just a very good spell. I don't know. I like this one a lot. For like a level 1 damage spell, it seems very solid. Okay. We're going to back up 5 yards then. Well, she was already kind of backed up. Somewhat. He's going to pick up his bow. Which is 2, and then he can move 3 yards. Right now, no, he was 7 yards. He moved up to 6. If he moved back 3, he'd be at 9. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be shooting anything, to be honest. They're going to be up in his face pretty soon. And we're just going to have to kill. Unless we use another force barrier. And then we could back up to like 20. Okay. So he's going to pick up his bow. He moves 3 yards back. So he's now 9 yards away from them. And balance is like, I don't know, 12? 12 yards? And that's their turn. The other guys get to go. Orc 1 swings for 2d6. Is that 1 health? Orc 3 swings. Doesn't matter, it's broken. Okay. Then Orc 4 goes. Orc 5 and Orc 6. Honestly, they could flee, because clearly these foes are beyond them. But we'll say they don't flee just yet, even though they lost now 2 leaders. They've got nothing left to you know, they've got nothing left to lose. They're gonna keep going. They can't hit anything if they just walk, so I guess they're all gonna run. So 3 of them have now run up to Truco. He didn't equip his bow, he just kind of, you know, put it around his back or something. He picked it up. So he's still got his melee weapons out. And that's the end of the round. I hate to keep relying on the same old trick, but it's damn good. If we both take the initiative, Truco goes first and retreats a yard and then runs the rest of the way. He could get 13 yards away from them. Then Balance casts Force Barrier right in front of these 3. And then she moves another 5 back. She's currently 3 yards from them, so she'd be 8 yards away. Which isn't great, but it's livable. It would buy us a little bit more time where Truco can probably fire off a shot. Or 2. Alternatively, we just stand and fight now. We can probably drop 2 of them pretty easily. And then Truco just has to survive. And they are rolling with Banes. So odds are pretty good we'll be okay. I think we just make our stand here. I very well could do the Force Barrier. It is probably the safer result. Assuming the Orcs don't try something different. But even if they started running around the Force Barrier, that's still good. I mean, it's just a good spell. But no, we'll go for blood. So we're both going to take the initiative. where we stand, and Truco's gonna try and kill one of these fresh orcs. He rolls with 2 boons. He rolled a 1. That's not good. Got a 5, so that's 6 plus 3 is 9. That is a miss. Fuck! These ones, man. I mean, is it just me? I swear, how many times have I rolled this d20 and a 2 has come up, or a 3? It seems like 1 comes up disproportionately. It's just annoying, because he would hit on a 2 with that. Fuck me, man. Alright, anyways. Now we might rejigger, because he missed. So now he might retreat. What, 4 yards? He could back up 4 yards and be pretty much next to balance. And then she'll cast her 3rd force barrier. Annoying as hell. I swear 1 comes up way more often. I mean, I know that this is not truly random. I get that. But it should have the illusion of randomness. It's just such a convenient dice roller that I never want to switch, but it upsets me so often. Maybe all dice do that, I guess. Alright, that was our turn. She backs up another 5 yards, of course. It's easier to track on a grid, but we're working it. We're working it. She's technically 8 yards away, and he's now 4 yards away from the orcs. They all get to go. I don't think anyone runs into this or anything like that, because none of them would have to run. Well, technically, a couple of them are further back. They are going to have to run to get up to the... No, are they? No, I don't think they're going to have... No one's going to have to run. Technically, they would have to run to get to Truco, the ones in the back. But depending on how you do the order of operations here, they would see that there's another invisible field, and they wouldn't run directly into it. So we're just going to have everyone smack it, and it's probably just going to die. We haven't done too well in dropping these other orcs. All right, 7, 4, 9, 6, 11 is our 5. So that's 11, 20, 26, 37. It did not die, and it heals 1d6. So that's 6. Fresh round. Again, we don't know. The players wouldn't know how much health the barrier has, but considering that they would suspect that it was going to be broken that turn, they'd have to imagine it's got pretty low health. And it's going to break this turn. I think we're too close to not take the initiative. We could both take the initiative and run 15 back, which puts us in a pretty good spot to then take the initiative the following turn and kill a couple of them right away again. We're never getting a shot off again. It's just not going to happen. Technically, she's 8 yards back, I think. Oh god, my numbers are getting messed up now. I think she's 8 yards and he's 4, or is that no longer? We're just gonna say that. No one has ran, right? So yeah, I think that's correct, because he retreated. So he's at 4, yeah, and she was at 8. That's correct. So she doesn't have to technically run or move. She could not take the initiative and not get attacked this turn, no matter what. But I don't know what benefit it is for her to not... Well, then she could immediately blast one with all-consuming fires of hell this turn, take the initiative right away, and do it again. So I suppose that is her benefit. So she's not going to take the initiative, but Truco is. And he's just going to back up to like 7 yards. And he's got his melee weapons, and that's just where he's going to be. So he's not going to get attacked this turn. He can't get attacked this turn. But he also can't do much. This would be a good place to have, like, caltrops or something to just throw down as your action. Or any ability whatsoever. But it's fine. Alright, they all go. So the first guy does 8 damage and breaks through. That's it for force barriers. The other 4 then are going to run up. So, like, 2 of them are kind of next to Truco. 2 of them are next to Balance. And that's it. Balance now gets to go. There's no penalty for casting spells in melee range. So she's going to blast someone with all-consuming fires of hell. She'll target the 7 health guy. Alright, she rolled an agility of... Her intellect of 18. She gets a boon. 23, so it's a crit. She regains the casting of that one. And she deals 3d6 damage to him. 16, Jesus. He's dead. And then that's the round. Fresh round. Take the initiative. She's gonna cast it also on a fresh health one, a full health one. She rolled a 18 again. Plus 3. It's another crit, so she gets a casting back again. 3d6 damage to him. 12. He's dead. Jesus, she's machine gunning it. Truco then will attack the other full health one. He rolled an 11, so that's going to be a hit. He could crit, but he didn't crit. So it's just 4d6, which is enough. Yep, dead. Then they're done. Technically, I guess this one is on Truco. Balance could back up. Yeah, I guess she will. She'll back up 5 yards. Then Truco will tank too, even though she has higher defense, but he's got the health advantage, sort of. Alright. The other guy, what were we, like 8 yards away? So the other guy has to run up, unfortunately. But this guy's going to swing. He's got a +2 with 1 Bane. It's weird to finally be attacked. He rolled a 20. No Bane will prevent this from happening. So 2d6 damage on Truco, unfortunately. 10. Ah! Ha, ha! All our shenanigans. You finally got what's coming to us. 10 damage as this guy's spear sinks into Truco's stomach. Oh, painful shit. That's going to require some poultices. That's the round. Truco has 2 guys next to him. We're going to cast All-Consuming Fires of Hell again, because why wouldn't we? On the 5 health dude. We rolled a 7. They have a 10 agility, so that's already a success. We do expend the casting, however. And this is 3d6. 9 damage. He's dead. And Truco will then swing. 2 boons plus... Oh, he crit. Okay, well, that's 5d6. 18 damage. Dead. Alright. Now, again, that was an above... That was off the charts of difficulty. I'll just repeat this so we know how legit this is. Difficulty by tier per scene per character for novice tier. A hard encounter would have 3 points of enemies per character. So 6 points for R2. And that was a 10-point encounter. So even for 3 characters, that would be off the charts for hard. So yeah, magic is good, and you should love it. At this point, we could go through the orc camp and slaughter all the elderly and the children and the pregnant women and stuff, but do not underestimate an angry pregnant orc that's hiding a knife or something, and Truco is not feeling good from a spear through the gut. So we're just going to head back home for now, and likely that is the end of the orcs. They're not going to mount any sort of rebellion or something. They're going to flee this place, go somewhere maybe quieter that's not next to dreadful humans, and that is a success. And for all of that, I would say that's a level 2. That's the whole thing. Everything we did that comprises an adventure enough, I would say. I'd give the group level 2 off of that. So let's level up to level 2, shall we? Let's go to our novice paths, which will take an hour to load. We're going to get even more spells. Actually, we're going to get a fuck ton of spells now. There will be no limit to our spells. Alright, Rogue, level 2. Plus 4 health. He'll need that. And then he gets Backstab. Which is not super beneficial to him. It's pretty minor. Beloved of the Gods, make luck rolls with 1 boon. And if you ever roll a 1 on the die, which obviously does come up quite a bit for us, you can do a luck roll, which just replaces the result. So it basically is a reroll. But I don't think it's... The way that it's worded is kind of... It doesn't say whenever you roll a 1, you can re-roll. It use a luck roll result replaces the result of the attribute roll. So I think if you were doing an attack and you rolled a 1 plus your 4, you would remove the plus 4 and you just do a straight d20 roll. So it's not as good as a reroll. And that's once per day. But at level 5, I guess it's once per combat. Fighting style, you can take a fighting style from fighters, which could be a variety of good, juicy things. Magic use, you get a tradition and 2 novice spells. At level 5, you get an expert spell. That's all pretty fucking yummy to me. Mockery, it's pretty good. You get a free hinder action every turn. And then the target either becomes weakened or vulnerable on a failed roll. And if they're vulnerable, they attack targets other than you with 1 Bane. It's a lot of text, but it is a very good ability. Skirmisher, speed increases by 2, which isn't bad, as we saw. Having more speed is not bad. And whenever you attack, you get slippery until the end of your turn, so you can retreat for free. Again, I just point to spells. They're too fucking good. They're way too damn good. We also get Swift Recovery. So let me write that in. Swift Recovery, action or reaction when harmed to heal half damage total and move up your speed while slippery. Okay. And it's once per rest, but we know that. Alright, so what tradition are we going to take? Skullduggery is kind of... I mean, we did that before with our other rogue. It makes sense for a thievy character. It's got thievy stuff. But there's a lot of good options. We could take War if we want him to be a bit more in combat. We could take Technomancy, but it feels like it would come out of left field. I mean, how would he have anything? And you have to have a toolkit to even cast Technomancy. Shadowmancy. If we want to be also pretty thievery. Pyromancy, that's fun. Perhaps we should just roll a random tradition. Well, no, let's, oh, yeah. Random. Let's just see what we get. See what we like. 19, Psychomancy. Yeah, that sounds appealing. Psionic powers. Yeah, that does appeal to me in a lot of ways. The only concern that I have is that it's a lot of will rolls. Not all of it. But a good chunk of it is either intellect or will rolls. Yeah, he's not the perfect stats for Psychomancy. Let's roll something else. Dark Arts, we'll skip that. Conjuration or Symbolism. Let's look at Symbolism. Practice of imbuing magic into symbols. That's kind of interesting. Well. This is like fucking cognito hazards and shit. Baffling pattern. So you sketch in the air a complex pattern. Leaves a glowing tracery for 1 minute. Any creature that starts its turn with line of sight to the target space makes a will roll. On a success, they become immune for 24 hours. On a fail, they take 1d6 damage and become confused until the start of its next turn. And then at the start of their next turn, they would roll again. It's like just cognito hazard AoE. Brand of Cruelest Burning. As a reaction when you get a success on an attack, a burning brand appears on their body, emitting dim light, and they become impaired in an attribute of your choice and take an extra d6 damage the first time it takes damage in each round for 1 minute. Pretty good. Pretty good. Doesn't even have to be melee, it doesn't specify, so it could just be with his bow. Some pretty good stuff here. I think I'm going to take this. I know I was leaning towards Skullduggery initially, but this is some fun stuff. Alright, I guess I'll bring this up so you can see as well, because you like to see stuff. Seeing stuff is cool. It'll take a while, but we'll get there. Jesus, he gets like fucking proximity bombs. Okay, Symbolism. Alright, so I was looking at Glyph of Destruction. So it's a ritual, so it takes 10 minutes. You have to have a writing kit and rare materials worth 5 copper pieces. That's going to be tricky to come across out here in the boonies. We're going to have to go to a big city for him to even be able to cast this. Depending on how your DM feels, I guess. But it lasts for 24 hours. You put a 1-foot diameter glyph on the target surface. You decide what activates the glyph. A creature, ally, or enemy, which might be a specific individual or not, touches the glyph or moves to within some distance of it. When activated, the glyph disappears and fire fills a size 5 space centered on its location. The fire deals 3d6 damage to each object in the space, 1d6 damage to each creature in the space. Failing a luck roll, they take an extra 2d6 damage. So yeah, just a nice proximity bomb if you know there's like a patrol or something like that. Mark of the Beast. Put it on a creature within 5 yards. The target becomes vulnerable for 1 minute, cannot benefit from invisibility, and cannot hide from you. Yeah, I mean, vulnerable for 1 minute with no save is kind of good, I suppose, against a defensive target. Rune of Unflagging Vigor. Reaction when a creature starts its turn within 5 yards, blah, blah, blah. Target makes strength and will rolls with 1 boon and imposes 1 bane on rolls against strength and will. When the target becomes injured, can end the spell early to heal 2d6 damage. Okay. We're going to take symbolisms. I think there is some fun toys here. It's a very different kind of magic compared to balance. We have to pick a talent. Okay, so here's a ritual. Lasts for 24 hours. Or until you use the talent again. But you can only use the talent once per day. So chances are at the start of each day, you're just doing this on somebody. Yourself or someone else. They make rolls to resist magical effects with 1 boon and impose 1 bane on rolls made against it using magic. So it's magical protection. Wouldn't be bad to have on him, but it's not... we don't encounter that many magical creatures, you know. Rune of Defense. You place it as an action on 1 creature in reach. For 1 minute, target's natural defense increases by 3. We could use this once per day for now. Natural defense increases by 3. Right now, his natural defense as a rogue is 11. So that would bump his natural defense up to 14 for 1 minute. And with leather armor bumping that up by 1, he'd have 15 defense total. The problem is it's 1 minute, it's once per day, and it's an action. Those are all sort of negative aspects. If it was a reaction at the start of your turn, it would be far more beneficial. Rune of Tracking. You can use an action to place GPS on something. An invisible rune appears on the target, remains for 24 hours. You always know in which direction you can find the target, blah, blah, blah. And Rune of War. Use an action to appear on a weapon you can see within 10 yards for 1 minute. Grants 1 boon on rolls to attack with the weapon, and deals an extra 1d6 damage. For our sort of style of play, where we ambush with bows pretty often, that's more beneficial to us. We can put that on right before we shoot, lasts for 1 whole minute, the whole combat, and your bow, you know, he's easily dealing a good amount of damage then. And then at level 3, it bumps up to 2d6, and then at 7, 4d6. So we're going to go with Rune of War. Funny, I picked combat stuff, I know, but... Action, weapon within 10 for 1 minute. 1 boon on rolls and extra 1d6. So you kind of have to remember at like level 3 and at level 7 to go back and look at over all your stuff, because it might get a bump up. We want Baffling Pattern because that's the Cognito Hazard. So that's only 1 casting per day, but it's, you know, how many opportunities you're going to get to use it. I guess that is something that actually goes through Force Barrier. Or at least that's how I would DM it. I'd treat it like just a visual Cognito Hazard that they see it, they take damage. I mean, it's not like there's magical energy moving between the two. So, yeah, we could just put up a Force Barrier and slap a Baffling Pattern up in the sky above it. Pretty good. For 1 minute. Sketch in the air. Any creature that starts its turn with line of sight to sketch makes will roll, becomes immune for 24 hours on success. On failure, 1d6 damage, confused until start of next turn. Okay, we got that. And then the other one, there's Brand of Cruelest Burning, which I think is also fairly decent. There's Entrapping Circle. Invisible circle on the ground. Size 5 space within 10 yards. Lasts for 24 hours. Once it's activated by any enemy moving into, within, or out of the target space, making a luck roll. If they fail, they activate the circle, which causes it to radiate bright golden light up to 10 yards high and forms an impenetrable barrier around the enemy. Barrier remains until it's destroyed. It has health 20. Until then, nothing can pass through the barrier or climb it. So it's specifically... I don't know. It's weird. It sounds like it's one enemy, and only one enemy gets affected. But it's a size 5 space, so I'm not quite sure how it could only be limited to one enemy. Glyph of Destruction, we already went over. That's like the proximity bomb. My only concern is the rare materials and getting a hold of them and actually being able to use this, along with the writing kit. Mark of the Beast, 1 minute vulnerability with no save is not too shabby. Vulnerable is an extra boon on all attacks made against it. Yeah, and all attribute rolls against it, so that's pretty decent. And then the Unflagging Vigor. Strength and will rolls with 1 boon. I'm pretty certain a strength attack is a strength roll. So, yeah, Truco could put that on himself as a reaction at the start of his turn and the start of combat, and he get an extra boon on all his attack rolls. And if he ever gets injured, he can just get a free 2d6 heal. It's not bad. Is it better than Brand of Cruelest Burning, though, as a reaction? Probably not. We tend to go up against some bigger targets that punch above their weight class, you know, to sort of make things fair. I throw some heavier monsters in. Brand of Cruelest Burning is pretty damn good against them. Being strength impaired with no save for 1 minute kind of fucks over a lot of enemies, and an extra d6 every round. It's not bad. We'll go with Brand of Cruelest Burning. So he's only got casting 1 stuff. He's not going to be spamming spells or anything like that. When you get a success, an attack roll, for 1 minute, target is impaired in an attribute and takes an extra 1d6 damage from first hit each round, including the hit in which you apply the brand, because it happens when you get a success on a roll to attack an enemy, which I assume is before you resolve the damage. All right, yeah, I think that's all pretty good. Now, that's all stuff that he gets in comparison to just taking a fighting style from Fighter. And if we had done that instead, he could have gotten, say... Oh, I don't know. He could have taken Armiger. Basically just giving him a boon on all his attacks. That would have been something pretty decent. He could have taken Crack Shot if he wanted to be better with a bow to roll with a boon on that, and use ranged weapons to make free attacks, but I would argue Armiger is just a strictly better option, considering he does do melee. He could have taken Dual Wielder, Use a reaction to attack with a weapon you wield in your offhand when you attack. So you could attack twice per turn. I'm not quite certain of how that works, though. I don't get exactly the benefit of dual wielder. Because if you attack with 2 weapons normally, you just add the damage of your offhand weapon. And maybe dual wielder implies that you can use any weapon that's in your offhand, any one-handed weapon, which is better. I don't know. I'd have to look at the Discord, and yeah, I probably will. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Those would be the main contenders. Probably Armiger, just so he always has boons. But Trickery is pretty good. So, I don't know. It's not great. The other one he could have taken is Mockery, which is kind of nice, but not as good, I think, as Spells. There are definitely other traditions he could have taken that would have been pretty solid, like the War tradition if he wanted to be more combat. He could have taken Combat Precognition from Divination to get all boons on all his attacks and impose Bane on rolls to attack him. And then he could have also grabbed from there Interpret Omen and like Experience Revelations. Divination. Shockingly, Divination is quite good for like a melee fighter. But we're fine. Okay, next is Mage. I know, it's running long now. So level 2 Mage gets 2 health. Gets Spell Recovery, which is a big buff. Recovery. Action to heal half damage and regain all novice spells. And she gets 1 more tradition and 2 novice spells. She doesn't have to take a new tradition. She could just take another talent from one she has. But new traditions are kind of fun. There's a lot of fun options. So I think let's roll for a new tradition. 6 is Chaos or Order. I'm not going to take Chaos. We already have Order. Psychomancy, nah. Evocation. That's a classic. Evocation is not Evocation from D&D, though. This is more about sound. This is like shouts and stuff from Skyrim. Hateful syllable, harmful syllable, bolstering syllable. Okay. I mean, you know, why not? Let me bring that up here. Evocation. Hidden within every tongue spoken or written lie, fragments, syllables, and sounds that survive from the moment of creation, when powers ancient and terrible imposed order on substance. The secret words of power and give voice to them. Alright, so for talents... At the start of your turn, you can target one creature within 5 yards. Target makes a will roll. On a failure, you can issue 1 command to the target. Choose one of the activities that normally requires the use of an action. On the target's next turn, it must use an action to perform this activity. If it cannot, the target becomes confused. Interesting. That's... It just says it must perform that action. But it doesn't say, like, doesn't say that much about the command that you have over it. Like, you have to attack an ally or something like that. It just has to perform that action. So if I tell it to hide, it has to do the hide action. But if I tell it to attack, it just has to do the attack action if it can. It doesn't say who it attacks. So, I don't know. It doesn't seem as good as I thought. Word of breaking is just as an action, a target within or object within 5 takes 1d6 damage. Honestly, it more appeals to me for objects than creatures, because if you can just say it's just spam 1d6 damage on an object over and over and over, that has potential benefit. So I guess we'll go with that. So we're going with evocation, and we're going with word of breaking. Action to deal 1d6 damage to a creature or object within 5. Okay. Then we have bolstering syllable, which actually goes up in castings as you level, and it doesn't require an action. And you change the size depending on how loud you speak it. The sound you make uplifts those who hear you. Until the end of your next turn, the target makes attribute rolls with 1 boon if you whispered, 2 if you spoke, 3 if you shouted. This is very interesting. Okay, harmful syllable sends painful ripples to those who hear it. 1d6 if you whisper, 2 if you speak, 3 if you shout. And it's each creature, so that includes our buddy. That includes Truco, potentially. Guy like fucking Black Bolt. It's funny. Hateful syllable, each creature, blah, blah, blah. Target must use a reaction to attack the creature nearest to it. If it cannot use a reaction, instead becomes confused until the end of your next turn. And then it rolls to attack with Banes, depending on how loud you speak. Healing syllable. 1d6 if you whisper, 2 if you speak, 3 if you shout. Okay. Hindering. Till the end of your next turn, target makes attribute rolls with 1 Bane, 2 if you spoke, 3 if you shouted. And then mobilizing. Increase speed. Very unique spells here. Well, we gotta go with harmful syllable, because I gotta be Blackagar Boltagon. This casting's 1. Size 3. 10. 60. Fucking size 60 if you shout. Every creature in 60-yard radius taking 3d6 damage. Dude, we could fucking level. We could have leveled that goblin camp. Just walking into the middle and shouting. And then I could spell recovery and do it again to really make them feel it. That's really funny. That's going to be great. It's going to be great. Take 1d6, 2d6, 3d6. Okay. And then what else would we want? God, and these are no actions. That's the really crazy. These are just free damage. It's gonna be rough on Truco. But geez. Hateful syllable also could be really good for groups. All of this is pretty strictly combat related. We could take healing syllable to heal Truco, but it's not like an amazing heal. I lean towards hateful syllable. Yeah. Dude, she's becoming really a creature. She's a creature of the night. Casting's 1. I really should specify no action. No action if you lack confused, stunned, unconscious. So that's one of the best parts, is not even requiring a reaction. Size 3, 10, 60. Creatures must use reaction to attack nearest creature. If no reaction, come confused until end of your next turn. 3 Banes, 2 Banes, 1 Bane. So if you shout, every creature within 60 spaces of you has to attack the nearest creature with a reaction with 1 Bane. It's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty damn good. Potentially quite ridiculous depending on how many creatures you fight. But we tend to rummage around in full enemy camps and stuff, so that would just cause pure fucking chaos. Like, can you imagine, like, me just hiding in the bushes next to an orc camp, and I just shout, "Fuck!" or something, and then every creature in there, they all will have a reaction. Every single one of them will have a reaction. There's no save. They all will turn and try and hit someone next to them. And with only 1 Bane, many of them will hit. That would end the whole thing. I mean, it's just beautiful. I love it. All right, that's it. That's our level 2 for both our characters. So many fun options in this game, man. All right, so next time we will investigate closer to this priest and the cult, and we'll start getting into that whole thing. There's gonna be that landmark or whatever nearby, some sort of ruined temple or something that we're gonna have to investigate. Who knows how big this cult is, how extensive it is, how capable they are, but they've got some magical abilities, so yeah, it'll be fun. For now, though, my name is Mang. This has been Solo Rule Mangging, Shadow of the Weird Wizard, generic Hexcrawl number 6279. I'll see you fine folks in the next part.